Destek Talks. My name is Khan. I have a very special guest today, Mr. Guy Finley. Hi Guy, thank you for joining.
Hello Khan, all the way around the world. How are you today?
I'm amazing. How about yourself?
Life is good.
Likewise, it's amazing. I'll just briefly give an insight about who you are to the audience who doesn't acknowledge who you are. So just to briefly mention who Guy is. Guy is a worldwide known author. He's a musician. He's a founder of a non-profit organization of self-realization called Life of Learning Foundation. And with his books all over the world, Destek Publishing has its 4 books published in Turkey. As you can see here, just give me a second.
Very colorful.
It's amazing. How do you find it?
Huh?
How do you find it? Do you like it?
Oh yeah, no, that's beautiful. Beautiful.
And he's mostly known for his book, Just Let It Go, translated in Turkish under the name of Yaşayabilmek. And this book has sold more than 2 million copies across the world. So, turning to our questions, Guy, I would like to first start with personal questions, then turn to the books. So, when I read your biography, I was wondering, what made you abandon your career as a musician? And now that you are giving spiritual and self-realization teachings, do you combine it with music?
Well, the first answer, Khan, is that you really can't say that love of something ever abandons what it loves. I loved music because it was a way to bring up out of my heart in words and lyric tone how I felt. And from the time that I was a very young man, and I mean 11 or 12 years old, I had a certain series of experiences and longing, and my music just became the way I expressed this wish to be connected to something more broad, something divine. So over the years, I developed as a composer. I had a very successful career, but it wasn't what I was intended to do with the rest of my life. So what happened was it became clear to me in a number of ways, and by the way, connected with letting go, that the person who started out with the love of music got trapped by the possessions, the powers, the fame, because I was very successful as a composer. And the next thing I know, I'm living in a big house, and instead of loving to write music, I had to write music in order to keep everything going. And one day I was sitting at my piano, I'm thinking, what happened? I started out free, I started out in love, and now I'm not free. And because I'm not free and feel compelled to create, I almost resent the very thing that was my first stage of liberation. So in a period of time, Khan, it became evident to me that something had gone wrong, that I missed something somewhere along the line. And along that time, I had been developing my spiritual life, and I just realized that I had to quit. And I literally quit. I quit.
Interrupt you for a second, just to clarify. It's I think the audience will be interested by this. So you're saying that one thing that was actually giving you freedom at some point in your life was enslaving you somehow.
Yeah, yeah, a prison. But you see, the thing is so important to understand. It really wasn't the music business. You know, my relationship with the music industry that was the prison. The prison is and always is that I had become identified and attached to a certain level of life, a certain kind of social status, and wound up serving something that I never set out to do that, but that's what happened to me. And it was clear that that was a dead end. Not that music is a dead end. The music is of the spheres. It is part of our life. It runs through every cell in our body. But I quit. And literally within 2 weeks, I pretty much started traveling around the world looking to see if I could meet someone somewhere who could help me understand the journey that had brought me to that point where one life was over and another life was about to begin. And that's when I left the music business. Not that I left the love of music, but I left the love of being someone important in the music business.
So,
And that,
in
and
a way,
that's when
you just let it go. The adjective.
I had,
Was it,
I had to let it go, Con. We let go of things when at last we're present enough to ourselves to realize that something is holding on and it hurts to hold on. The more clear we can be aware of what it is that is clinging the way it clings, and then realize the captivity is the clinger, is the part of me that believes it has to have that to be free. The more I see that, the freer I am, because real conscience won't have anything to do with it.
amazing. And how do you feel about your decision now?
How do I feel what?
About your decision. Do you have any regrets?
It was the evolution of the music, Con.
Yes.
Now I write music in prose form, you know. Now I write, and I one day will go back. I keep telling myself I'm 71 years old now, so I don't know if I really will be able to do it. I will go back and write a musical that will be a combination of my love for music and its expression with the spiritual ideas, so that I can present on stage something that's more a symbol, you know, that people can digest more easily. Because music gets you through a lot of stuff that the mind rejects.
As you mentioned, you told me that every molecule, every particle in your body has a certain harmony.
Absolutely.
And turning to your books, you've reached an amazing success all across the world, not only in English-speaking countries, but also in Oriental or other countries, including Turkey. So I'm just wondering, do you think that your teachings embodies a universal language that people can relate?
Look, if we get rid of all the nonsense connected with fanatical ideology, with dogma, with identities derived from being attached to the idea of what is divine, and we cut to the chase, there isn't a mystic, a master, a true prophet, a saint anywhere in the world that won't tell you it is one teaching, it is one God, it is one path, and that all who eventually find something to align themselves with realize that. And it's always cutting away the dross. You know, in the Sufi tradition, parting the veils, polishing the mirror, all of these images relate to the idea that the problem isn't that what we need to perceive to be free isn't always here with us right now, but it's always covered up by a mind that's looking for what it's already a part of. So yes, it is a common language because there is one consciousness intended to be aware of itself, and in its continual awakening, rise and rise and rise until it achieves a certain realization where it understands what it couldn't before.
So, in other words, you're saying that there is a unified God. There is only one, which
Yes.
Encircles everyone.
Look, I don't know where you, I assume you live in Turkey. Do you live in Turkey or are you in? Yeah.
I live in Turkey. I used to live in London, but I just moved back to Turkey with the virus.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, if you look out at the ocean, if you're anywhere near the sea, the ocean has 1,000 different waves. Some are tiny, some are big, some long moving, some quick. Those waves represent, in our conversation, religions. Underneath the wave, what gives rise to all of the various momentary expressions is the ocean. The ocean is the divine. The ocean doesn't care what anybody calls a wave, because the wave comes up and the wave disappears. And it always has been that way. And that same thing goes for our consciousness and our life. We should seek the ocean, not a wave to ride.
And so I really love this conversation, but I have to move forward.
Yes, of course.
And so within your book, Just Let It Go, in Turkish, Vazgeçebilmek, you share the main principles of how to seek and practice the art of letting go. So would you like to summarize in few words and give just some brief insights to our audience how to do such?
There isn't one of us who would deliberately hurt ourselves or another human being. If we were aware in the moment when a negative reaction comes up and begins to point the finger of blame and want to punish or otherwise chastise someone because they're not living up to our image of them, if we were present, Khan, to the pain inherent in separating ourselves out from those that we blame for what our own consciousness is reflecting, then we couldn't do it. But we all do it because we're asleep, spiritually asleep. The path is about awakening a consciousness that believes it is intelligence, that believes it is God in truth, which is why it can so quickly judge everyone and everything. There is pain in that consciousness that consciousness doesn't know is in it. Awakening is the awareness of that pain in that consciousness, and then seeing what that consciousness is attached to and blaming for its pain. That's letting go. Because then there's no dogma, there's no path in quotes, no set of steps. There's just awakening of an awareness of a consciousness that's asleep to itself, and the awakening is the path and, in a manner of speaking, the arrival.
So you are saying that there is no set of law or rules that governs it, but you're rather saying there is a certain approach or understanding, a philosophy behind it that is also its ending. So it's this approach, but also the ending. So being aware and being aware of letting things go is also the approach, but also the consequence. Am I correct?
Yeah, look, Khan, let's say I'm having this talk with you,
Yes.
and you say something and it really bothers me.
Yes.
There I am. And I don't think to myself that the problem is that I have a demand on Khan, that I insist he like me and approve of what I'm saying. I don't think the problem's mine. I think the limitation is yours. But any limitation in relationships, any limitation of love is always connected to a consciousness that is asleep to itself and that must find something to blame for its pain. And as long as we are unaware of that suffering And what creates that suffering in this consciousness, we are going to be a captive of that consciousness. So awakening, awareness, and then being able to attend, attention is a very important thing, and I know we're going to talk about it, that if we can keep ourselves present to this living presence, then that awareness and that light will show us what it is that's keeping us a captive and what we need to let go of all at the same time. Then you don't need laws. You don't need all of this nonsense, these crazy spiritual teachings today. You don't need them. It's all in here.
In the heart and the soul, whatever you call it. Definitely. So turning to your last book, which was recently published in Turkey. Here everyone can see it, I hope. The Essential Laws of Fearless Living in English. So there was one story in it that really moved me. It's the story with Rebecca.
Yes.
She was a beginner level pilot when she faced the unknown. So in this story, it's the mountain. She panicked and she didn't know what to do. Once she understood that she was holding the yoke, the control wheel, she flew over the mountain. Simple as that. Simple as that. So, from my perspective and my understanding of this story is that once you're aware that you are controlling the plane, actually the rest is very simple. You can avoid, surpass, or crash even if you wish to the mountain. But it's up to you. You're in control of it.
Let's just change that slightly.
Please.
A man or a woman who is caught in a fear, which is what happened to Rebecca in that story. She's trying to fly. She's already nervous. She's got a tight grip on the yoke. And suddenly, there's the mountain. Fear has only the choices that fear offers. Fear never says, Rebecca, relax. You have control of the yoke. Just raise your altitude. You're all right. Fear doesn't say that. Fear looks at the thing it fears and then resists the very thing that it attends to. Here's a very important idea, and I think it's easy enough to understand. There is no psychological fear without negative imagination. There is no psychological fear without negative imagination. So here's this young girl. Here's a man at the office. Here's a wife with her husband. And something happens, and all of a sudden, OMG, oh my God. And what happens in that moment? The mind locks onto one thing out of a million. One thing. And then it locks onto what that one thing is that it has described. It is looking at the meaning of the moment that it has given it, Khan. Why do I look out and see something to be afraid of other than my mind has picked one thing out of the moment and then tells me what that one thing is and then tells me to be afraid of the one thing that it's picked? That's a trap. That's captivity. That's fear. She woke up because the instructor helped her understand. Look, you have control. What does control mean? See that fear is limiting your choices. Make a new choice based on awareness, not on what fear is telling you to be afraid of.
Don't you think that this fear or this conditioned fear has somehow some powers that compels you to think always the negativity within things? For instance, I personally think that most of us are fighting against imaginary enemies. And the scale of problems, actually, it is much lower than what we think.
There's no question about it.
But aren't we somehow, like humans, I'm talking in general, whatever the culture is, because I've been in several countries, it's always the same.
Yes, it is.
When we're facing a problem, an issue, always we're obsessed or compelled by this idea of problem and negativity. How to avoid it? What should be like? It's not easy, even though you're aware. There is a certain, I'm not going to call it dark force, but something pulling you to think that way.
Khan, it doesn't matter whether you're in Turkey, India, Japan, China, the United States, the Fiji Islands, the Galapagos. I've been to all those places.
Yes.
It's one sleeping consciousness that continues itself by creating a very distinct kind of illusion. And here's the illusion: that my life belongs to my own reactions. My life is not my reactions. My reactions are a revelation of my present consciousness. But our reactions now define us. And they define us because we are confined to the choices they offer us. And no negative reaction can do anything than offer fight or flight. That's it. And when you live like that, which most of humanity does, your choices seem to be relegated to a set of I can or I can't, I will or I won't, instead of I can see. I can understand, because the degree of understanding that produces captivity isn't understanding, it's justification. And the justification belongs to a consciousness that keeps itself in a pattern of pain and punishing itself and others so that it can hand and maintain, God help us, this human consciousness, our collective soul, sitting under the thumb of a level of consciousness that cares nothing for anything that it maintains, let alone for itself.
Actually, this was my next question. So you say throughout the book that these negative thoughts and feelings are self-limiting. It constrains us. It makes us impossible to discover what is possible. So what would be your advice on how to liberate ourselves from these negative thoughts? You said awareness, but anything else, any exercises, any practical guidance that you can share with the audience?
Would you live with a friend who every day when he comes home from work brings with him a large garbage bag, and the first thing he does with the large garbage bag is throw it all over your house? How long would you live with a friend like that?
Never. I mean, I'll just quit.
Right, and because that's pretty clear. Would you live with someone wherever you go, he's always saying, Khan, don't do that. Khan, get busy. Go, hurry up, Khan, get that done. No, don't do that, Khan. No, don't touch that, don't touch that. How long would you live with a bully, Khan?
Not more than 1 second. I mean,
you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
We live with a consciousness that bullies us because it presents to us everything we stand to lose if we don't do what it says it has to be done. When we understand we've lost if we live like that. If we understand the world is corrupt and criminal and breaking down because it is filled with human beings, all of whom have assumed power to bully us because of what we want from them, then we have a chance. Real spiritual life, Khan, I call it a full contact sport. There's no, oh, this is beautiful. I love this. No, when a man or a woman finally understands that they have lived without knowing it under the thumb of something that forever is telling them who they are, what they can do, when they should do it, and how fast it should be done, that human being begins to say, that's enough. Because a rebellion starts by the grace of a certain awareness. And as that rebellion starts to rise, spiritually speaking, then the human being starts to struggle with what it is that has them enslaved. And then they realize, holy cow, I really am. I really am enslaved. I really am, just like all scripture says, asleep and a captive of a consciousness I didn't even know I was a captive of. And then the work begins. That's what all of my work is about, Khan, is helping people reach that
initially,
point.
your understanding, sorry to interrupt you, just initially, you, for instance, for me, that was the path, at least. First, I think at university, I was aware that there were things to be solved. First step, awareness. Then the real struggle starts. Because once you're aware, before you're aware, actually you're blind. So there's no problem if you're blind. It's a bliss. Exactly. There's no problem. You just live on. But once you're aware, as you mentioned, you have two choices, two paths. Either you face it, or the worst case scenario, you're gonna be erased.
Yeah, I think that is 100% right. And it's important that everybody understand that this life is not a race to win, but a school for our higher education, which means that at every step of the way, including seeing ourselves fail miserably, which we have to, we understand we're in training. We are in training. We are learning to meet without fear or with fear as necessary our limitations, but with the awareness that we are not intended to sit under the thumb of any limitation, to challenge that limitation until we learn enough about it to be set free from it by rising above it within us.
So, one last question. I was wondering, so you mentioned that fear is playing a massive role, a very key role in our daily life and what is surrounding us, our inner self, but also our relationships. So there is an external element to fear. So how can we prevent fear interfering with our relationships?
No, Khan. We don't prevent fear from doing anything because fear fears fear. Fear resists itself. What we do is we start to understand. We presently believe, and it isn't I who believes this, it isn't Khan who believes this, it isn't the people joining us that believe this, that we are only as valuable and worthwhile as the world around us confirms us as being. That means that I depend on the conditions in my life to confirm me as I imagine myself to be. And the more I depend on conditions to confirm me, the more fearful I am of every condition that changes when the wind shifts. So until I understand that my consciousness, who I am, is not a creature of condition, but rather conditions exist to help me transcend the consciousness that believes in them, then a shift takes place. And I'm not trying to control anybody or change anything. I'm simply wanting to understand how this, write this down, listeners, as goes my attention, so comes my experience. As goes my attention, so comes my experience. Fear always takes my attention and places it on the thing feared. And when my attention goes on the thing feared, what's my experience? Exactly. Other than, oh my God, this is meant to be feared. No, it is meant to be transcended. It is meant to be transformed in the truest meaning of the word, so that it isn't the condition that's transformed, it's my consciousness. And then I see that the world is actually trying to help me wake up instead of falling asleep deeper and deeper in a make-believe fear that belongs to a make-believe human being.
So I think for the audience who are interested in maths, the equation should be fear equals to attention minus experience. So,
I didn't follow that, but say it again. Fear?
So I'm saying for those who are interested in maths, so
Oh,
who have an approach such as that, fear equals to attention minus experience, because the experience helps us to handle it. And in my journey, my experience was actually that I've discovered that the only thing that I don't fear is fearing. I fear everything, like some elements in everything, but I don't fear fearing. So does that make sense?
yes, absolutely. And why should we live like that, assuming that we can continue to grow into that understanding? Because we can discover directly, not through scripture, east or west, we can discover directly that everything that happens to us in life happens to us for the purpose of helping us enter that moment as one order of human being and exit as another order of human being, which means I'm guaranteed to transcend the moment as long as I go into it with the wish to understand it instead of control it.
Marvelous. So I think this will lead us to the question of interests. As briefly mentioned before, interest and focus and attention actually either empowers or restrains the subject matter. In your book, either it was in the chapter 2 or the chapter 3 of the Turkish version, you mentioned a small story about noticing someone at traffic lights. Whatever the reason is, it might be because of his behavior, the person's behavior, how he looks, how he speaks, whatever reason. Once you put your attention or focus on that person, suddenly that person turns to you and looks at you. So there's certain chemistry in it. Either you call it the law of attraction, the law of something, or the phenomena, religious phenomena, whatever you call it. But
Look, Khan,
yes, listening.
if I was to turn my camera around, I live here in Southern Oregon on a mountain. And there are deer outside right now and all creatures, and it's a cold, relatively foggy day. There isn't one thing in everything that I see that isn't connected to itself by a field of energy. We can call it an awareness, nature's awareness. It interacts, interpenetrates, connects all things. That's scientific at this point. We understand that. The observer affects the observed. Attention is what moves through that field and connects the one who gives the attention to the thing intended to be understood. So attention is connection. Connection is exchange. Exchange is communion. Communion is self-knowledge. So as we understand the power of attention, not to get stuff, I mean, look, that's all part of it. And I'm not denigrating that. Millions of human beings still believe that they need stuff to be complete. It's just part of our path. We all go through it. It seems inescapable because this consciousness is always trying to complete itself by something outside of itself. But when the pain finally reaches us and it says that doesn't work, then we start to understand, I need to keep my attention. I mustn't let it go to the trash bag. I mustn't let it, listen to this, fall on an enemy. Why should we not let our attention fall on an enemy? Because the enemy exists only as the image in our mind formulated in the moment of that encounter with that person. Were they bad? Did they do something evil? Did they hurt me? Of course they did. That's what human beings do. Even the ones that are dressed in suits and ties. That's what we do. We try to take from each other to make ourselves feel rich and whole. But when I understand that when I hate someone, the person I hate may or may not even know I hate them. The thing that I hate is the image in my own mind packed with the content of an experience, so that when I lash out at an enemy, I am lashing myself. This is why Christ said, "Judge not that ye be not judged." Because in the very action of having an enemy, I am focusing on a content of my own consciousness, and the conflict isn't between me and the enemy. The conflict is in a consciousness that has to have an enemy in order to make itself feel real and strong.
In one way, it makes me think about the whole notion of humanity, which always seeks this binary system of problem and solution. Problem and solution. We always seek that. For instance, once you find a solution to a problem, to complete yourself, you seek another problem.
Yeah, you like live, right? You one day, I hope, by the grace of God, to come and visit your country, because, for instance, Rumi, he said the antidote is in the venom. The problem and solution are not separate things. They actually work together in a complementary form to change the consciousness that divides everything up into problem and solution. So that when we get that a little bit, we stop looking for answers as provided by fear, telling us what to do to be free, and we become more interested in the poison, the fear, to understand that that's how it works. And that as long as we let it work its way in our life, we work for fear, which is why the world is the way it is.
Such a notion. It's, wow. It makes sense. And so one last question, which I think this...
I like you, Khan. I like you.
Thank you very much.
I like you, Khan.
Likewise. It moved me a bit, so it's a little bit hard to lead to the next question. Anyhow.
Don't worry.
So now I would like to talk about forgiveness, which is, again, a vast topic. And my first question will be, again, I'm not seeking an answer, like per se, like not like something framed, but how do we forgive people who hurt us?
So, Khan, our work, those of us who aspire...
forgive those who hurt us, but also forgive ourselves.
Yes. Our work, those who aspire to have what I would call an intimate relationship with the divine, is to understand that everything that we need to know already is within us. Therefore, I mustn't look for a way to forgive. Instead, let me understand why there needs to be forgiveness. So here, Khan, everybody, please don't throw this away. A lot of people don't like my teaching because it requires too much responsibility, too many things to be personally involved in. Khan, I'll answer for you. I know that you have hurt people in your life. I have hurt people in my life. Every last one of us has hurt someone or many people along the way, and continue to do so. God help us. Would I ever deliberately hurt a human being? Would I ever deliberately hurt a human? And may God have mercy on those who have fallen so far that they actually believe they want to hurt a human being. But you and I, and hopefully those interested in these ideas, we don't want to hurt anybody. I want to be a kind man. I want to be a patient woman. I want to have a relationship that doesn't involve punishing people. But I do it. Why do I do it? Because I'm asleep in the moment. There's no one there when I hurt somebody. There's just a consciousness that's afraid and that pushes to protect itself from a threat it imagines. That's all that's there. There's no Guy there. There's just a consciousness that belongs to Khan and every person on this planet caught in that conflict. When I finally understand that I do not want to hurt anyone, but I do so because I am in unconscious pain of a sufficient degree that it pushes out and lashes out, then I understand why everybody else hurts me, because they're asleep just like I am. They are unconscious just like I am in the moment when I bring pain and punishment to others. Seeing that consciousness is the beginning of forgiveness, not just of my brothers and my sisters and the politicians and the hypocritical religious people, but of all humanity, because we are all asleep in a consciousness that doesn't know what to do with its pain other than punish other people for it. That's forgiveness. Because why? Because I have to die to the part of me that believes it's different than everyone else it blames for the pain it's in. That's forgiveness, Khan. Letting go of myself, because I see I am not myself, nor are you, Khan, when you are hurting me.
But there's also so when we say we're hurting someone, there's somehow certain expression to it. So there's ideas, intentions, but also a certain expression when we do something. When there's a positive act. For instance, I have a very good intention to do something, then but the consequence of it, either because of its expression or because the how the other person receives my expression. Sometimes I'm not the main actor. The other person can be the actor who interprets the my expression and turns it into a negative thing. So what I'm asking you is the other person. So we can't control the other person, how it will think about our expression.
Right.
We can't do anything about that. But most of us still, despite that, despite knowing that we have good intentions when we do things, still are hurt, especially those who have a more sensible or more kind soul.
Look at man. We are almost always looking for a way to make sure that nothing is rocking the boat too much. This is our mentality is, can we just float through this moment
yes.
and get out without a problem? That's basically how we meet everything. This may sound as if it's not an answer to what you've asked, but it's for you personally, and of course, anybody that can understand it. The only problem that any of us have with any other human being in any moment of life is what we want from them. Period. End of story. And as long as who I am rests on how you perceive me or how you interpret what I've said or what you do with my action, you own me. Because I'm always going to try to make the boat smooth. And it's not me trying to make the boat smooth. It's a consciousness that can't stand disturbance, because disturbance proves it lives in a dream that it doesn't know it's in. This is the beauty of the awakened life, Khan, of being so present to life and to yourself as one thing, that everything serves your continual awakening. That's what rebirth is, Khan. East
So we should be thankful.
Huh?
We should be thankful.
Yes, exactly.
I think the last step, even after forgiving, it's thanking God, the Almighty, the light, whatever you call it, for it. Because I was schooled by it. I was nurtured by it. I learned from it.
Yeah. I'll tell you something, a personal story, but that everyone who is on this road less traveled understands. Every moment of our life, whether recognized or not in that moment, is a lesson that has been provided. And I don't know how God does it. Out of all the things in the world, everything comes to this point, and I'm standing there, and I can either accept the revelation, which turns into the realization, and therefore the integration between myself, the will of heaven and earth united, Or, as we presently do, go, no, 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 not that, not now, not time, later. And by the grace of God, the lessons keep coming because the consciousness keeps attracting the conditions it needs to be awakened by the grace of God.
I think that will be the last question that I was supposed to ask you, or I wanted to ask you, I suppose. But well, Guy, I would like also to invite you in Turkey after the COVID-19. We'll be delighted to have you here.
I would love that. And may I invite all of the people who are with us and who are following. I talk online, Con, twice a week for free, all around the world, twice a week. And if anybody's interested in it, it's free. There's nothing to join. Just go to Guy Finley, GuyFinley.org/online. That's it. GuyFinley.org/online, or free classes. And we can have an hour and a half twice a week working together about these ideas. So anybody interested, or just go to my website, guyfinley.org, and you can spend 5 years just going through all the free resources there. So I call this, you and I have had a good time because we're kindred spirits and we understand and acknowledge what is good and true. Not that we can live it perfectly, but we acknowledge it. Now, Con, you and I must act knowledge. Now we must act knowledge. So it's not just something pleasing to our mind, but now we're going to make ourselves go into the moment with the wish to understand it and come out of it a different man that went into it. That's the work.
Well, Guy, thank you. Thank you for sharing those kind words. And for the audience, feel free to search on Google. If you can't find the website, simply write Guy Finley and I think that it will be the first link that you will pop out. And for those who are interested in seeing these videos, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Thank you, Guy, for being here. It was a pleasure to know you.